All right, this is a video response for JesterBell. A lovely lady to be sure, but I wanted to respond to the video. For Harley Quinn, I put my video link in the description below as to my favorite Harley Quinn stories. Injustice, of course, being for dummies who don't understand the character, but the video for Harley Quinn will be below. But let me talk about my history with DC Comics. I'm in my 40s, early 40s. My first brush with comic books, I think my older sister was collecting Batman from the 80s, the Neil Adams, the Frank Miller Batman, the Detective Comics, Silver Age type stuff, the big graphic novels like Bride of the Demon, Son of the Demon, all that stuff. And my personal brush was with, I believe the first Superman comic I ever saw was the one with Silver Banshee and Superman's a skeleton. This was the John Byrne one. I think it was Superman number 19, the second series in 1987. Might have been 88. And I had no real knowledge of things. Now, I was an opportunist. I didn't care about the comic books until Superman died in 1992. Long time ago. And for me, it was like, oh my God, a character can fucking die. Like a character can die. Like these characters were always like, when I lost my brothers to natural causes, it had awakened within me the idea that people can pass on, even young people. But in the fictional world, with all the TV characters from sitcoms and old black and white shows and action movies and sci-fi, the characters are always surviving. Nothing bad ever happens to the good guys until we get to the death of Superman. And that's when I realized, oh, yeah, and it was like Superman versus Doomsday. And what made Doomsday so frightening wasn't that he was a big scary monster, is that he didn't talk. Most villains talk about how great they are and their plans for world conquest. Doomsday never spoke a word, at least before the year 2000. He never said anything. He just kept, or at least before 97, I think. Doomsday just growled and grumbled and said Metropolis, and that was it. He just never really said anything. So you didn't know his motivations. He just destroyed things, and he was just angry. So I would follow, and these were the days when Superman had a weekly comics, Action Comics. Then the next week was Man of Steel. Then the next week was Superman. Then Adventures of Superman, which was formerly the first Superman series from the 1939 onward. And I remember Geis, Rodier, Roger Stern, who had wrote Action Comics. You had the husband and wife of John Bodignov, and I think it was Dennis Jank, I think there was like a husband and wife Bogdanov. Bogdanov? I don't remember if I'm saying it right. And then with Superman, it was Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding. And Adventures, you had Tom Grummett, Doug Hazelwood. I'm really trying to remember my comic books. I mostly collected Superman. Didn't collect Batman until probably after Nightfall. But my sister was collecting Nightfall with the Azrael Batman and Bane breaking Batman's back. And these are the days where they had platinum comic books. They had, foil stamp. They had these gimmicky comics. Now we still see like alternate covers. But back then they had a gimmick. One had a hologram cover. One had foil cover. One had a lenticular cover. One had a Superman versus Lobo fight where it was like a color form sticker, restick the figures on the cover. All kinds of gimmicks. And I collected those comic books throughout from 1993, early 93. I think I was about 15 years old to see the end. And I think that was the last thing Jerry Siegel signed was Superman number 82, where he came back with the long hair, the mullet. From 93 all the way to 2002, 2004, I did get Jeff Loeb's Superman and Batman comic book series, some of it. Along the way, I collected Elseworld stories, annuals. I collected when Hal Jordan was in his late 40s, early 50s, had the gray hair, and he became Parallax. when Wonder Woman was replaced with Artemis, red-haired Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman had a wig on and a weird outfit with leather jacket. Uh, Batman uh, was replaced by Azrael. Then Batman came back, and then Dick Grayson took over as Batman. Tim Drake wasn't gay; he was still into girls, into Ariana, I think, and then Stephanie Brown, and I think the other Batgirl, the newest Batgirl from the '90s, late '90s, um, the one who joined the Birds of Prey. Now I can't remember her name, but Cassandra Cain. I'm trying to remember right now off the top of my head. And there were so many stupid crossovers. The ones I remember were, I mean, there was Armageddon 2001 and Legends and Millennium, but there was also from the 90s. And I didn't get the John Byrne stuff and the early Dan Jurgens stuff until later on at the swap meets. I got all the old issues with the Man of Steel 6-issue miniseries from '86. But I remember Zero Hour, where time went backwards, 43210. I remember Genesis with Darkseid. I remember the Electric Superman. Remember Superman was in a containment suit? I believe I have that action figure somewhere. Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern. I got the JLA Rock of Ages series with Howard Porter as the artist and Grant Morrison as the writer. Grant Morrison, great writer, great writer. And so I got all these different issues on and off. Justice League, I got certain issues. When Plastic Man was there, Orion was a member, Barda was a member. I got the Generations with John Byrne writing his whole version of Superman and Batman from the 1930s all the way to the distant future, to the Legion of Superheroes time. So many different stories. Shazam, one issue of Shazam somewhere from one series, Plastic Man from another series. I kind of just cherry picked different things. And at some point I got bored because aside from the fault of writers and artists, the comic books was one big middle story. Like after a while, the trends and like Superman appears to be in his 30s as well as Lois, yet suddenly they have smartphones. Suddenly there's social media. Even though they hadn't aged from the 80s and 90s to now, they still look the same age. When I learned about the Crisis on Infinite Earths, I went and did my research about it and was disappointed to learn that the series itself did not literally erase time and space, not like the Sonic Archie series where Sonic and Mega Man would team up for the second time and Eggman's machinations would redo the timeline literally. That's not what happened with Superman and the others. They would go on with their lives and John Byrne would just start a new series. That was it. Frank Miller would just start a new series. And so it was very confusing. In my time, when I was a teenager, Barry Allen was dead. He was not coming back anytime soon. Jason Todd was dead. He wasn't coming back anytime soon. And it wasn't until the 2000s that those two men came back. We had that Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, Identity Crisis. We had these big, long issue crossover things. We had hyper time, multiverse stuff. I remember one girl who was at Frankenson's collecting comics, and she ripped up the final issue, I think, of Final Crisis or whatever, because she didn't like the whole climax being the multiverse of bubbles and domes. And I have no idea. And after Lex Luthor was revealed to be, or President Lex Luthor was revealed to be an evil bastard, and Batman took away his business, and Talia Heed gave the building back to Bruce Wayne, and Lex Luthor went back in the armor. Supergirl Kara Zor-El was born, and the Matrix Supergirl, the protoplasmic one from the 80s, was gone, disappeared. A lot of things had shifted over. And it was disappointing in a way because the times would change and the characters would change. Characters would die off. Conduit would die, another Superman villain who came back 30 years later for no real reason. I'll get into that in a moment, but I covered that in my reviews of the Action Comics. And so time naturally, writers would change. Dan Jurgens left, Jeff Loeb took over for some of the books. We would see Mongol dead, the Sodom Mongol in the early 2000s. Characters died again, came back, died, came back, died, came back. Harley Quinn, I will say, has yet to die in the comic books, right? I don't think she's died or taking control of the multiverse. Those are the two things left that she'd have to do. That and have a descendant in the Legion of Superheroes. Three things that Harley has not done yet. She hasn't died. She hasn't taken over. She hasn't joined the Legion of Superheroes, and she hasn't controlled the multiverse or be part of have a galactic responsibility, which, it's going to happen sometime. Somebody's going to write that. That's going to happen. Aquaman died, Wonder Woman died, Batman died, Superman died, and they all came back. Of course, Harley Quinn's going to die. She'll come back. Um, so after they tried to reboot with the New 52 stuff, I dropped off the map. I was not even anywhere near comic books. I spent my time collecting Ultimate Marvel, from Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men from from the year 2000, all the way to 2013 when the comic books were running slow with Ultimates 2. Very poor updating times. I was waiting almost a year for issue number 13 to come out. That was terrible. I gave up on comic books. I collected Masters of the Universe stuff from Val Staples. I collected whatever was interesting. King of Spies, I think, with the Mark Miller stuff, or I collected Red Sun. Some of the Elseworlds was interesting, but it's like you said with the Black Label Harley stuff. I have Harleen, the hardcover, and there were just some interesting books. The Amanda Conner stuff with the Birds of Prey with Joker was interesting. Was very good. I liked it. But ultimately, like, I feel like I'm done with those comic books. I don't think there's anything anybody can really do, and if there is, they won't touch upon them. It's just not for them to do. I mean, you could stand to have an Elseworlds monthly series or weekly series where you have different writers and different just messing around with the characters until something permanent comes out. But I think Clownfish, I don't have an opinion of the YouTube people themselves, but they covered this stuff before about the failure of Marvel and DC. I have a question though. How honest can your reviews be? If you're officially working for DC Comics, how honest can your reviews be? Because I remember Rotten Tomatoes. I think Warner Brothers owns Rotten Tomatoes, so it's like the reviews for movies cannot be too honest. Otherwise, people will not go see the movies, and that would not be good for Warner, right? Some movie studio owns Rotten Tomatoes, so it's like, so it's like, how honest can those reviews be, and how honest can you be? So you can make a criticism, but you have to give a good score, or else you're fired. And it's kind of like, that's how it is. So I barely discovered you. I don't know much about you at all, but I saw your video and I said, yeah, I just wanted to respond to this. The last major series I had bought after I bought the Earth One books, and that was the penultimate series I bought, because except for the Wonder Woman series, which I prefer, cringe if you may cringe, but I liked Wonder Woman Odyssey by J. Michael Straczynski. Even though she's wearing pants, it was a great story, and I liked Odyssey more than Wonder Woman Earth One. But I liked the Earth One books. My favorites being the Green Lantern Earth One books, then the Batman ones, then Superman Earth One Book 3, and then I would say the Titans and Wonder Woman books are on the bottom. Because with those books, they're like movies. They're not connected to each other. You don't have to get a bunch of crossover issues. I mean, even with Gods and Monsters, there was a bit of crossover issues. You didn't have to commit too much. You bought a book, you waited next year for the next book, like a movie. Like, here's Batman 1 movie, here's Batman 2 movie, here's Batman 3 movie. That was kind of how it was. So low commitment, and I was really enjoying that. But I think they kind of ran its course. I collected other things like Supreme Power by Michael Straczynski. And the Ultimate series I got into was Superman and the Authority by Grant Morrison, followed by Kennedy Johnson's run on Action Comics. And I had one critique, and the only critique I said was that we should have had Superman regroup with the Authority after defeating Mongol and giving back the Philosians their power, and Warworld is destroyed, and the people get the people from the different planets get their freedom back because tyranny is done, Mongol is dead. But we didn't get that. We just get Superman going back home to Lois, which is right, but is wrong. You needed to go back and spend some time with them, and how did they feel about this whole ordeal, and then maybe show a montage of them back to where they're going to be. So that's what I would think that could have been necessary because he took them on that journey, and I was really moved by it. They're supposed to do a Justice League animated counterpart, which I think defeats the purpose of it. So does the Injustice movie, which I knew was shit before it even came out. I knew that Injustice cartoon was shit before it even came out. Um, so at my age of 44, being almost 30 years, and we're coming upon 30 years for the death of Superman and Harley Quinn's anniversary, I don't know what we've learned. It's as you said, going back to critiquing your video, um, these are people that are being recycled to save money, probably so. I don't know you much. This is the first video I've watched, and they get the same people over and over, recycle them over and over and over and over. Now I'll show you a piece of art that I found that I made. This one here. Oh, let's see if you can see that. Now that's from Superman Dynasty, as it is called. You can barely see that, but let me see. Get us a little closer. I will show you. This is so you can see the different. This is based on a 1996 Elseworld story, in which in that story Superman's already dead, but in this version here, this is like a dark world where the echolations of sound produced can show you the shapes and colors of this future bright cyberpunk world on a distant planet. And each of these characters have like 1/8 of Superman's powers. And Superman's dead, but who knows how he died, but he's a hologram. And so he misdirects these heroes, this Superman team, by saying Lex Luthor and Brainiac have returned to cause problems, but it's really Superman who's the villain. But all he wants is to be turned off because he's lived his life as a computer, as a hologram, and all he wants is his freedom back. He just wants to be with Lois in the afterlife. So it's all a trick. But meanwhile, you see one is flight, one is X-ray, one is super speed, one is steel, one is heat vision, one is shield. And so all these characters come together. Oh, this one here is freeze breath. This one here. And there's like a Henry Cavill profile there. So that's what I was working on. And I showed this off too. And so I've kind of just retired. If I pick up anything interesting, I'm collecting Masters of the Universe toys and books and stories. I collected mini comics that I used to read. I think other than Elseworlds, seeing a Batman Ninja or Superman, maybe a Bollywood Superman or some other thing, other than exploring cultural sci-fi references for these superheroes, I think we've peaked. I think we have peaked, and also too. It's so not only is it the writers, I don't know about the artists, but the writers are uninspired, but we just keep running in circles. And whenever there's a great idea, it used to be you could pitch Elseworlds ideas to DC Comics. Some person could do that, but nobody cares, and we just don't take the time to explore that. Now, political correctness and quote unquote wokeism might have a hand in it, but I think also too it's just like nobody wants to try anymore. When Ultimate Marvel Comics came out, that was like the second coming of John Byrne and Frank Miller and people who wanted to say, let's try something new, let's try something different. And now those days are gone. And I don't know who's going to do it. Mark Miller doesn't really commit to superhero stories anymore. I can't think of, Kennedy Johnson's going to do typical Superman stories, I think. But I think for me, the Action Comics run that ended with War World Apocalypse was it for me. I'm happy with retiring on that note. There are some people who collect comic books until they die. I know a few that run their own stores, and they'll collect comic books until they die, put their most expensive prized possession in their hands as their coffin lowers 6 feet under, right? That's great. And the movies, I'm not looking forward to them, but it's whatever they're going to be. I was looking forward to more Zack Snyder's Justice League, but with the problems that Amber Heard is having and actors coming back and rumors of Henry Cavill jumping fence or not, I don't know what's going to happen. But If DC Comics does not do better, if Marvel doesn't do better, people are just going to go do something else. They'll have other hobbies. So thank you for your video, and I hope you like my video, and stay tuned for more content. It won't be DC Comics all the time, but whatever it is, I'm going to be happy doing it. Thanks, and remember, we have the power. Until next time.